in Chicago in 1968, the protests around the Democratic Convention, a police confrontation that with anti-war protesters that led to a lot of violence. What Nixon said was a party that, this was his direct quote, a party that cannot unite itself cannot unite America. And I think the Trump people, if they think that this is going to help, they're putting the Democrats and whoever their nominee is going to be in a position to say exactly the same thing. A party that cannot unite itself, meaning the Republican Party, if it's linked to such things, can't unite America, it could bounce against him in a very big way.
Michael Beschloss, NBC presidential historian, joining us on short notice tonight as we watch these remarkable scenes in Chicago. Michael, thank you very much.
Remarkable is the word, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to bring Robert Costa into this conversation if we can get Robert on the phone. Robert, yes, of course, is a Washington Post reporter. Robert, we're talking about this as not just violence, but as violence in a political context in this country tonight. I have to ask how other Republicans are reacting to this tonight and whether or not the Trump campaign really is going to try to spin this as somehow advantageous to them.
Based on my reporting, Rachel, many Republicans tonight are watching these images and they think it's a troubling and complicated moment for America, for the Trump campaign. They're talking about the historical undercurrents and about, as Michael mentioned, 1968. But what's striking to so many Republicans is that what was at the heart of Richard Nixon and the silent majority in 1968 and the Chicago protests at the convention that year was the Vietnam War. And this time it's not a war, it's not an issue, it's a personality, it's a candidate at the fore.
And a candidate who is not a side issue to the specific thing we're seeing, which is protesters and supporters of that candidate punching one another. I mean, the candidate has been engaging directly with that as a subject of his campaigns and a subject of his public politicking. He's been talking about this overtly and in increasingly, he would say politically incorrect, I would say insightful, I-N-C-I-T-E, insightful ways. I'm wondering if that part of it, his role in not just witnessing this among his supporters, but encouraging it, is something that may curdle him in the eyes of Republicans who might otherwise be okay with him as their standard bearer just because he's drawing out a lot of voters.
What this campaign is about is bringing our people together. Not letting Donald Trump or anybody else divide us up. No, we are not going to hate Mexicans. We're not going to hate Muslims. We're not going to insult women. We're not going to insult veterans. We're not going to insult African Americans. We are going to bring our people together to make sure
the disruptions of his events by protesters become more and more a feature of these events rather than a sideshow. And unfortunately, we have seen his supporters rise to his rhetoric and get more and more violent toward people who are there to protest. And so tonight in Chicago, with thousands of people set to protest Donald Trump, not surprisingly, given his views, given the way he's been campaigning around the country, and given the makeup and the politics of the city of Chicago, with thousands of people due to turn out, what they did is they let not hundreds, but thousands of Donald Trump supporters and many, many, many anti-Donald Trump protesters into the same room. And then at the last minute, they announced that Donald Trump would not be coming and the rally was canceled. That did result in some fistfights. And some very, very tense moments on the floor of that pavilion at the University of Illinois at Chicago. What I mean to say, I recognize it's uncomfortable to hear it, but I absolutely believe it, and I can show you that this thing that happened tonight in Chicago did not happen by accident. That this is not some surprise. Wow, look at how difficult this rally was going to be in Chicago. Donald Trump telling Chris Matthews tonight, what a shame it is that you can't even have a rally in this country anymore without any violence breaking out. I can show you in tape from over the last couple of weeks, and most specifically from today, why the thing that led to what happened tonight in Chicago is nothing unique to Chicago. It's nothing unique to anger in our country. It's nothing unique to the character of the type of people who don't like Donald Trump. The reason this happened tonight in Chicago, this fiasco that gave us these images that will now be indelible in American politics, is because of the behavior of not just the Trump campaign, but specifically Donald Trump, the candidate. I think this is on purpose. And I can make my case to you. I will make my case to you. I will show you what I mean when we come back. Presidential candidate Ted Cruz is in Rolling Meadows, Illinois. He's just talking about what happened tonight in Chicago.
This country, without a threat of violence, without anger and rage and hatred directed at each other. We need to learn to have disagreements without being disagreeable, to have disagreements while respecting human beings on the other side. Earlier today, over 30 people were arrested at one rally. And then tonight, as violence broke out, the rally was canceled altogether. Now, the responsibility for that lies with protesters who took violence into their own hands. But in any campaign, responsibility starts at the top. Any candidate is responsible for the culture of the campaign. And when you have a campaign that disrespects the voters, when you have a campaign that affirmatively encourages violence, when you have a campaign that is facing allegations of physical violence against members of the press, you create an environment that only encourages this sort of nasty discord. America's better than this. We don't have to tear each other apart. Instead, we can work together for positive, proactive solutions to the real problems facing this country.
Ted Cruz tonight saying about that event that Donald Trump bears responsibility. Fistfights breaking out on the floor of the pavilion at the University of Illinois at Chicago after thousands of Donald Trump supporters and what seemed to be maybe thousands, at least hundreds of Donald Trump protesters were all inside that event at the same time, waiting for Donald Trump to appear when it suddenly and without warning was called off for safety reasons.
Mr. Trump just arrived in Chicago and after meeting with law enforcement has determined that for the safety of all the tens of thousands of people that have gathered in and around the arena, tonight's rally will be postponed until another day. Thank you very much for your attendance, and please go in peace.
I should tell you, we've now got a statement from the Chicago Police Department about what happened tonight. They say shortly before 6:30 p.m., the Chicago Police Department was notified by officials that the Trump campaign had canceled their scheduled event. Donald Trump's campaign manager is facing allegations of physical violence toward a member of the press. A conservative reporter says that she was grabbed pretty violently by Donald Trump's campaign manager on, I believe it was Tuesday night, and that she was not thrown to the ground, but essentially brought down to the ground by him as he was grabbing her hard enough to leave marks on her arm. The Donald Trump campaign and the candidate himself encouraging physical violence by his supporters, telling people to punch people in the face. One part of this phenomenon is becoming more intense at Donald Trump rallies. There have been instances in the past where he has encouraged or at least praised the idea of violent actions by his supporters, when he's spoken wistfully about how great it would be to beat people up at his rallies, or he's told people that he would pay their legal fees if they beat up a protester on his behalf. He has done that in the past. But this sort of bloodlust, right? This half tongue-in-cheek, mostly serious call for a tougher America where there are more beatings and where anti-Trump protesters should fear for their lives. As he heads into these tinderbox cities today and tonight, I just want you to watch how that part of candidate Donald Trump's rhetoric has escalated. Okay, we have We've put date stamps on these comments from him. These are all comments from him from the podium at his public events. We've put date stamps on them so you can see when he made them. We have laid these out in chronological order. If you want to see the crescendo here, if you want to see the deliberate act that created what happened tonight in Chicago, well, watch where it came from. And where this culminates is what has happened over the course of today and into tonight. And it really is like nothing we've ever seen in mainstream American politics before. We have seen this at the fringe of stuff that's barely called politics. When I was a kid growing up in Northern California in the 1980s, you used to see this kind of thing at skinhead events, right? But this is now mainstream, front-runner, Republican national politics. And tonight in Chicago, it really turned into playing with fire. But if you want to know where it came from, and you want me to prove to you that it was deliberate what happened tonight in Chicago, well, here's where it came from. Watch, this is chronological.
If you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously. Okay? Just knock the hell. I promise you, I will pay for the legal fees, I promise. I love the old days. You know what they used to do to guys like that when they were in a place like this? They'd be carried out on a stretcher, folks. That's true. I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you. In the good old days, they'd rip him out of that seat so fast. But today, everybody's politically correct. Our country's going to hell with being politically correct. Going to hell. All right, get him out of here, please. Get him out. Get him out. Are you from Mexico? Are you from Mexico? Huh? Are you from Mexico? Get out of here. Get out. Out! Oh, this is amazing. So much fun. I love it. I love it. We having a good time? U.S.A. U.S.A. All right, yeah, get him out. Try not to hurt him. If you do, I'll defend you in court. Don't worry about it. We had 4 guys. They jumped on him. They were swinging and swinging. The next day, we got killed in the press. That we were too rough. Give me a break, you know? Right? We don't want to be too politically correct anymore, right, folks? Get him out of here. Get him out. Get him out of here. Get him out. Are these rallies the most fun of everybody, right? Do we have the most fun? Do we have the most fun? Yeah, get him out of here. Get him out. Get him out. So disruptive. Remember when Bernie Sanders, they took the mic away from him? That's not going to happen with us, folks. That's not going to happen. Remember that? He walked away from the mic and he stood back and he watched these 2 young girls talking to the audience, and they said, "We came to listen to him." And he was standing in the back as 2 women took the mic away. Now, that doesn't happen to us. Get that guy out of here. Get him out. Get that guy out of here. Get him out of here. Get him out. We had some people, some rough guys like we have right in here, and they started punching back. It was a beautiful thing. I mean, they started punching back. In the good old days, this doesn't happen because they used to treat them very, very rough. And when they protested once, you know, they would not do it again so easily. But today they walk in and they put their hand up and they put the wrong finger in the air at everybody, and they get away with murder because we've become weak. We become weak.
Anybody who tells you there is no connection between the behavior of the mob at these events and the behavior of the man at the podium leading the mob at these events is not actually watching what he has been saying from the podium. And what he has been saying and the way he has been egging this sort of thing on, it is escalating. I mean, that very last clip we just showed there from him, that was in Fayetteville, North Carolina on Wednesday night. And that was when the Trump supporter threw that sucker punch elbow in the face of a protester who was being taken out of the event. That man there with the ponytail throws the elbow right here. He's since been charged for doing that. He got arrested and charged the next day. But if you want to know why things escalated today to the point where this Donald Trump rally had to be canceled tonight in Chicago because security fears that there was no way it could be kept under control, and then it quickly proved the point. If you want to know why this happened tonight, consider that Trump supporter was charged with physically assaulting that protester at a Trump rally yesterday. He was arrested and charged yesterday. And then this is how Donald Trump today, again in St. Louis, not exactly a city that is at ease on issues like this right now, right? This is how Donald Trump today in St. Louis talked about violence at his rallies, talked about the rightness or wrongness of his supporters throwing punches at protesters and beating people up at his events. This is what happened today at the event before Chicago went off the rails tonight.
You know, part of the problem and part of the reason it takes so long is nobody wants to hurt each other anymore, right? And they're being politically correct the way they take them out. So it takes a little bit longer. And honestly, protesters, they realize it. They realize that there are no consequences to protesting anymore. There used to be consequences. There are none anymore. So that's it. All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Are they gone? Yeah, they're gone. Our country has to toughen up, folks. We have to toughen up. These people are bringing us down. Remember that. They're bringing us down. No reason for it. These people are so bad for our country, you have no idea, folks. You have no idea. They contribute nothing. Nothing. They can get up, and when they're being whisked out, they can raise their bad finger up in the air and drive people, which is very unfair. And some people get very angry at that because you know what that represents. And then when they get a little bit overly angry, they're in trouble. The guy that raised his finger, no, that's no problem. That's no problem. Get out of here. Get out of here. Get him out. Get him out. Troublemaker. Get him out of here. Hurting this country, folks. Hurting this country. Big mouth. Yeah, get him out. Go home to mommy. Go home and get a job. Go home, get a job. Get a job. I'll tell you, these are not good people, folks, just so you understand. You know, these are not good people. And I heard this was going to happen, and they said, Mr. Trump, would you like to cancel? I said, absolutely not. These are not good people. These are not the people that made our country great, but we're going to make it great again. But these are not the people. These are the people that are destroying our country.
That's the way that Donald Trump has been talking about protesters at his events. That's the way that he has been directing his supporters at events to treat those protesters. That was today. If you want to know what led up to Chicago tonight, that was Donald Trump's display of leadership and calming the waters at his event this afternoon.
Terrible.
Apparently, officials of some kind in St. Louis were worried enough about what was going to happen at that rally that it was suggested to Mr. Trump, at least he said it was, that maybe that event should be canceled.
How about
that event was not canceled. It went on, Mr. Trump lamented that we can't be rough enough with protesters anymore, that these are terrible people, that these are the people destroying our country, that we need to toughen up as a country. Anybody who gets in trouble because they do something to a protester who gives them the finger, that is the, yeah. That's what he did in St. Louis. They didn't cancel St. Louis. They did cancel Chicago. After the streets were full around the venue, after the venue itself was full of thousands of people, and they just let them all in, and then they called it off, and then they left and just let them fight it out, literally fight it out. American presidential politics isn't like this for anybody else. American presidential politics did not get this way on its own. This is the work of an American presidential candidate who deliberately made this happen. And the Republican Party is about to nominate him for president.
we're watching a recurring tape here of an African-American guy. I'd say he's in his 30s, maybe, not much older, young guy. He's a very middle-class guy. I can't tell. He's well-dressed. And my son says he's really angry at your rally. What do you say to him if you had a chance to chat with that guy about what you're trying to do for this country as potential president? What do you say to him?
I want to bring back jobs, Chris.
Go home and get a job. Go home, get a job. Get a job.
If you recall yesterday at the debate, I said that presidents can't just say whatever they want. There are consequences to the words of a president. There are consequences to the words of a presidential candidate as well. You have a candidate in Donald Trump who clearly has used language that appeals to anger, and in some instances has actually said to the crowd, no, let's beat this person up, or let's do this, or let's do that. So it shouldn't surprise us that you see a growing amount of violence at some of his events. I would point out there isn't violence at my events. There isn't violence at Ted's events. There isn't violence at a Kasich event. There isn't violence at a Sanders event. There isn't violence at a Clinton event. There's only one presidential candidate who has violence at their events. And I do think Donald needs to realize and take responsibility for the fact that some of the rhetoric he has used could potentially be contributing to this environment that is growing increasingly disturbing for a growing number of Americans.
He's walking out like big high fives, smiling, laughing, like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you. All right, yeah, get him out. Try not to hurt him.